All right, here we go, starting with chapter 6, solving trig equation 6.1. Take notes. Okay, so 6.1, solving trig equations. So this uh, this section is going to be done over 3 videos. So this very first one is just a very small, short introduction to solving. And then the second one uses a calculator, and the third one uses factoring. Okay. All right. So let's just kind of recall solving regular linear equations. So if you remember back in kindergarten, you guys learned how to solve something like this. 5x plus 7 equals 2x minus 5. And so you took this equation here and you proceeded to try to get the x by itself by doing these inverse operations. So, for example, I would subtract 2x on both sides to cancel it out here. And so I would get 3x plus 7 on the left, and on the right I would get negative 5. And then I would try to isolate that 3x, so I would subtract 7 on both sides. Okay, and so then I get the 3x on the left-hand side, negative 12 on the right-hand side. Now I want to get the x by itself, so I want to divide both sides now by 3. And I get the x by itself on the left, and I get negative 4 here as my answer. Okay? All right, so here in 6.1, we are looking at how to solve trig equations. So now you have a trig function inside of your equation. Okay, so let's take a look. So now we have something like this. Solve 2 sine x minus 1 equals 0. Okay, so I'm going to bring this down so we can work with it without losing it. Okay, so just like the equation up above here, you try to get the x by itself. So similarly here, we want to try to get the trig function with the x by itself. So I will need to add 1 to both sides and then divide by 2. Okay, so let's go ahead and do that. Add 1 to both sides. And then I get 2, these cancel out. And so I get 2 sine x on the left, and I get positive 1 on the right. And then I divide both sides by 2. And these guys cancel out. And so I end up with sine x equals positive 1/2. Okay, so one thing to note is that if it just says solve, then it means find all of the answers, all of the angles here where the sine of that angle is 1/2. And we know that there are infinitely many solutions because there are many angles that are coterminal with each other. So so that the sine of it is 1/2 as well. Okay, so if it says solve, then you have to include all the answers. And the way you do that is by writing it a certain way. So I'll show that to you here. Okay, so first of all, hopefully you have them all memorized. What angle? Here, let's do this. So we want to know when sine x is 1/2. We already know it's going to be 30 degrees, right? Okay, so here at 30 degrees, it's the sine of 30 degrees is 1/2. And then also over here, where the reference angle is 30, so that would be 150 degrees. Okay. Nothing down below because that's where it's negative 1/2. Okay, so from 0 to 360, these are the only two answers, correct? So x equals 30 degrees and x equals 150 degrees. So these are all of the answers from in one circle. But it doesn't say solve for this for only one circle from 0 to 360. It says just solve, in which case you can't stop here with your final answer. You actually have to say plus 360 degrees, any multiple of it, times n. Okay? And that, by doing that, by attaching the plus 360 degrees n times n, you get all of the angles that will be coterminal with 30 degrees. So you get 30 degrees and you get 390 degrees, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then we do the same thing here with the 150. We're going to go ahead and add 360 degrees times n. And that n can be any integer. So it could even be negative, so that you get all of the negative angles that are coterminal with these. Okay, so again, if it just says solve, you have to write your answers like this. Okay, if it says solve like this, next example, then you don't have to do that. Okay, so you might get one that says solve 2 cosine x minus 1 equals 0. So if it just says this, then we would have to write our answer like that. All right, but if it says this, solve 2 cosine x minus 1 equals 0 if your angle x is between 0 degrees and 360, then you don't have to do this plus 360n business, okay? All right, so let's go ahead and write this down below and solve. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and add 1 to both sides. I get 2 cosine x on the left, positive 1 on the right. I'm going to go ahead and divide both sides by 2. Cosine x equals 1/2. Okay, so cosine is positive over here, and that's going to be at 60 degrees. And also down here, okay? And we can't say negative 60 degrees because it's saying here that x is somewhere between 0 and 360. So we can't be smaller than 0. So we can't be negative. Okay. All right. So we can't say negative 60. We have to figure out this angle, this really big angle from here all the way to here. And that is actually 300 degrees. Okay. Because we know the reference angle is 60. All right. So then those are my two answers that are between or within this limit in here. So x is, you only want the x values that are between 0 and 360. So that would be 60 degrees and 300 degrees. We don't have to write it the way we did in the previous example. Okay, so if it says this, right? If you notice up in this previous example, it didn't have the condition here. It just said solve. That's when you have to do the plus 360n. Okay. But if it has this, you can just write the actual angles and stop. Okay. All right. Let's see. Let's do one more. Let's go ahead and solve 3 cosine x minus 5 equals 0 if your angle is between 0 and 360. Okay, so here we can leave our answers like this. No need to do the plus 360 times n. All right, so 3 cosine x minus 5 equals 0. So I'm going to add 5 on both sides. They cancel out. 3 cosine x equals 5. Divide both sides by 3. And we get cosine x on the left, 5 over 3 on the right. Okay, so this isn't something we have memorized, and we'll get it into that in the next video where we use a calculator. However, I don't need a calculator here because I noticed that this number, right? This number is greater than 1. And if you remember, sine and cosine are bounded between -1 and 1. So this can never happen. Cosine, the biggest cosine of any angle can be is 1. This is more than 1. So here we say no solution. Okay? No calculator needed. You could use one. You'll probably get some error message. Okay. All right. So that's it for this first part. Hopefully you have your 30, 45, and 60 and all the quadrantal angles memorized. And so that when they say, oh, well, when is cosine x square root 2 over 2? You should be thinking 45 degrees. And then the other one, which is way all the way around here, 315. Okay, so hopefully you have that memorized, or at least have it on a sheet so that when they're asking you what angle should be here, you can look it up quickly. All right, so if you have any questions about this first part, make sure you email me or text me. Don't forget to check in for attendance.